Hi, I'm Brenda Courtney, and I want to welcome you to my farm, Be-Ewe-Tiful Acres, the home of my business, Be-Ewe-Tiful Creations. I'm a needle felter. I've been felting for over 5 years. I also do wet felting, but today we're going to work on something that I've created. I've never seen anyone else who does this. I take my 2D flat needle felting, or felt painting, wool painting, what some people call it, and I put them on greeting cards. These have been very popular, very good sellers. I created this about a little over a year ago as something for my daughter, and she thought it was really cool, so I've expanded it and perfected it, I guess. So I wanted to share that with you today and show you how I do this. I also wanted to point out that where I'm standing is the home of my future wool studio. We're in the process of building a house on our ancient farm, and we've been working to restore this old farm, and the old farmhouse is just on its last legs, so we built a new house and included this wool studio. It's not done, as you can see. I'm surrounded by studs. So what woman doesn't like to be surrounded by studs? Hopefully, as we do more of these videos, you'll see the progress of how my wool studio comes together, but for right now, it's kind of bare bones construction, and I hope you'll bear with us while we work on learning together, and hopefully that someday you can join us in our learning center. We'll be teaching classes here, and hopefully you can find out about those if you follow my website or my Facebook page, which is Be-Ewe-Tiful Acres. So thanks for joining us, and let's get started. First, I'm going to show you how I do this. I take a 8.5 by 11 cardstock, any color you want. Sometimes I use colors, but I use white a lot. I'm going to score it I have it laid down lengthwise, and I'm going to score it at the 5.5 inch mark, and then use my paper cutter and cut that in half, and then you get this, and then I'll turn it sideways, lengthwise again, and score it at the 4.25 mark so that I can have a fold line to fold that in half, and you end up with a 4.25 by 5.5 inch greeting card, which is also known as an A2 card. You can get the perfect size envelopes that go with that size cards. Okay? That's done. Another thing that I do, and this is optional, you can cut a same size square of designer paper, any color you like. There's tons of them. You can get them at craft stores, online, and there are some companies that even do home sales. You don't have to have this. I have a fancy die cutter that cuts out the shape that I want, that I use for most of my frames. But if you don't have that, you can just use a craft knife and cut out a rectangle or a circle or whatever shape you want, and that will go as the framing. Today we're going to do a simple card with sheep on it. It's probably one of the simplest cards that I make, but it's also the most popular card that I make. It's my biggest seller. So you're going to need a chunk of blue wool, a sky color, sky blue, a chunk of green wool. I have blended different wools. Some of my wool is Icelandic. We raise Icelandic sheep, so I use quite a bit of that. But I don't always have enough dyed wool to do all the colors that I want to do, so I do buy wool from other local producers that dye their own wool, and then I have bought some online from Serafina Felting Fanfare, or Serafina Felting Fiber. Serafina Felting Anyway, I like to do my own blends. This green is a blend I call pasture because it looks like a pasture to me. And sky, this has some Icelandic blended in, and also some wool from Serafina Fiber Art and some local. This is a yellow, it's also a blend. You'll need a little piece of yellow, a little piece of black. This comes from Serafina. And then this white is Icelandic wool that has had the tog removed. Icelandic wool is Icelandics are dual coated. The tog is longer, coarser. It makes great locks, like you can see on this card. I used Icelandic tog to make his beard and mustache and his hair. They make great locks, but they don't felt as readily as the fell itself. The fell is much softer. So I have the tog removed, and in my opinion, it's one of the best felting fibers there is. It makes a nice firm core if you're doing a sculpture, but it also works nicely as a finishing coat, because with the tog removed you don't get as much of the hairiness. There's always going to be a little bit of fine tog left in it, almost impossible to get it all out, but that just adds to the strength when you're making cores, and is usually not a problem when you're surface felting. So with that, let's get started. I like to work on my lap. If you want a felting surface, you can work at a table, whatever's comfortable for you. I get this nice thick 2-inch insulation foam, and I like it about the best of any medium that I've used. I find it to be fairly long lasting. It does wear out. I do try to find ways to recycle it, like, you know, insulate the chicken house or some way to reuse it once the surface is all punched up, and you got two sides, so it lasts a really long time. I bought a large sheet of it last year, and I've taught 3 classes, and with what I've used myself and that, it's lasted me a whole year. So anyway, so pull out some fibers for your sky. I'm going to try to work upside down. This is not how I usually work. I like to start it with the fibers going up and down for the first layer. And you just need a few. And then you want to, below that, add some green fiber, some of the pasture, meadow fiber, whatever you want to call it. I like to go crosswise this way, and I'll explain why I do this in a minute. I know it seems kind of weird. So then I go another layer, and in this layer for sky, I go crossways. And the reason I do this is because to me it has the flow that you would find when you look at the sky, to me. And then when I put the next layer on the grass, it goes up and down like grass does, like grass would grow. So let that overlap, let them overlap each other a little bit so it'll get blended together. All right, in my sky, I have a little bit of white blended in just to give you the idea of clouds in the sky. And then for my needles, I'm starting with a double 38 gauge needle. I color mine yellow because I think it's a medium felting. I use these needles, this gauge of needle probably 95% of the time that I felt. So I'm gonna just get those felted down. This is a little larger than what I usually do, but like I said, I'm working upside down, so. All right, and then I have a template that I've cut that is the size of my card, and I'm gonna, because I got this so wide this way, I'm gonna do a sideways card. So I can see, make sure that I have enough I'll have to end up trimming quite a bit off of this, but if you're really good, you can do this without having to trim a lot. But I still go over. Sometimes I'm pretty good about it, but I still go over a lot. Measure that and make sure you got the right size. Make sure you pull this up a little bit, because otherwise your felt will start to stick into the board. So you want to loosen that up every now and then. Again, I just flipped it over and I'm going to felt the back down. With these, you do not have to get them as firmly felted as you do when you're felting pictures or other things, because they're going to get glued onto cardstock, so they're going to get firmed up. But you do want a little bit of firmness, so I'm going to switch to a triple 36 gauge needle just to firm that background up. This will be the only time I use this on this particular project, because I just want to firm this up a little bit. I like to leave the edges a little bit wispy. But if you don't like that, you can fold it over. I've done that before. It just makes it kind of thick. When I first started doing this, I was first making a white, just using white wool and making like a canvas and then felting on it. But I found that it made the cards very heavy. So I worked out a way that I could do it without having to do the white background first. And I just make my backgrounds now with the color of wool that I'm going to use as the background, so that I don't get that extra weight. Most of my cards I have not had trouble putting through the mail. There have been a couple that are really hairy, like this guy. I get a little crazy with the locks sometimes, but that cost me a little extra postage on that. So, all right, so we have the background done. You see it's not super tight, and you can see through it a little bit. It doesn't have to be super thick. I only did two thin layers. You just want something to get the picture that you're doing to go through and grab onto, but you don't want it so heavy that it's going to be hard to put it on a card. So I'm going to start with a small piece, very small piece. You see it's not very thick. This piece is about 2 inches long by an inch and a half wide, and that's probably more than I need, but I'm going to go with that. And then I just kind of fold it in to form sort of a circular thing, and then lay that approximately where I want it. This is going to be sheep in the field. Okay. Now I'm going to switch to a single needle, and I'm just going to poke that down in the middle. I like to leave it fluffy so it looks like a fluffy sheep, so I don't felt it real smooth, and when you put the face on, it's going to tack it down even more. But I like to let it have some dimension and, you know, not be super perfect, look like a woolly sheep out on the field. And I do 2 of those. And then after I do 2 of those, I'm going to put a sun, just a very small amount, about the same size as the white was, but maybe a little less, depending on how bright you want your sun. And then after you have your 2 sheep on, then you can decide where you want the sun to be. And kind of do the same thing as you did with the sheep, only you're going to felt this down more smoothly. I start and just make a circle, and then start pulling the ends in and tacking them down, which will kind of fill in the sunshine. And then once I have that like that, I'll switch to my 36 gauge needle just to felt that down a little more tightly, because I don't want that to have a lot of dimension. And pull that up, make sure it's not sticking down. All right. So there's that, and now we're going to put face and legs. I've got one already made up. So we can do, I might not be able to do this upside down. So what I do for the face is I take a piece of the black. You don't need very much. I'm going to take, and then a little bit smaller pieces. So we'll see how this works. It's amazing how little it takes to do this. So, okay, I'm sorry, that's gross, but to make it stick, I'm going to make a ball, and I just lick my hands. So the wetness will help it form a ball. Otherwise, if your hands are dry, the wool just slides all over the place and nothing happens. So I'm making a ball. Make it kind of tight. Lick your hand again. If you don't like licking your hand, you can have a bowl of water, but I lick. Everybody that buys a card from me gets a little spit in it. Okay, and so you're going to put that right in the middle, and then you're going to take your other two smaller pieces and do the same thing, just make smaller balls. That's kind of big, so see, I mean, just that little bit of wool makes a ball that big, so I'm going to pull that in half because I don't want that much. I do try to use as much of my own Icelandic wool as I can. Like I said, my opinion is that especially the Icelandic wool with the tog removed is about the nicest felting wool I've used. It felts readily and quickly and firmly. All right, I'm poking the larger black ball down in the middle here, just kind of getting that into a rounded, or sometimes I do an oval, kind of an oval, or almost a heart shape. And then I take the smaller balls and put them off to the side to make the ears. And once you get that down, then you can switch to your 36 gauge and get that poked in even more. This sheet got a little wonky, but that's okay. You could be standing sideways. All right. So, and you do that on the other one as well, and then you take a little more black, and we're going to make legs. I usually just do front legs. There's two ways you can do them. If you feel confident, you can just kind of roll them into a snake and roll it between your hands. Not circular, not making a ball, but making like you would make a snake out of clay. All right, make it a little longer than you think because you're gonna poke it down in there pretty good, and then do the other one the same way. Probably have more wool than I need. Okay. I almost always, unless I just forget, and usually I stop myself and as soon as I realize, start with my 38 gauge needle, because it does not felt it in as firmly, and it gives you the opportunity that if things don't go how you want them to, you can pull them out more easily. Once you use that 36 gauge and really poke it in, it's almost impossible without tearing up your card to pull out something you don't like. So I'm just putting these legs in, kind of let them go over up onto the wool, just looking like two front legs. And then I kind of fold that up, that end piece up, to give it a little more thickness. And then if I like how it is, then I switch to my 38. my 36, sorry. You'll see I have red on my 36 because for me this is hot felting. When you really want to felt strong and hard, this is hot felting. I use blue on my 40 gauge needle, which is a finer needle, and that's cool felting. When I just want to finish up edges or, you know, felt down some of the wispy pieces that are sticking out and I just want to clean things up, that's cool felting. So those are the colors that I use. I would be all for standardized colors on felting needles. and that is the reason I use the colors that I do, because then I can remember. That helps me remember without having to look for the number. Okay, so we have that. Do 2 more. His legs are a little long, but that's okay. I do another one on there. Okay? And then once that is done, we're ready to do our cards. I'm going to move back behind the table and show you how I put it all together. Okay, now you have your your wool painting or your 2D felting, flat felting done. I had added a little bit of more white to make it look a little more like clouds. So, you know, you can fix this up however you want, add some flowers, do whatever you want. Once you have it ready, you've got something like this. And I showed you earlier how I had cut a template for sizing. Well, when you cut that out, you get this handy dandy little piece from the inside. And I'm going to trim this wool down now. And so I just lay that over. And I want it to be just a little bit beyond the template because I want a little bit of wool for the frame to grab when I glue it down. You'll see what I mean in a minute, I hope. Sometimes you even actually have to end up doing a little more trimming once you get the card down, because of course it's never going to be exactly. Alright, so you get that out of your way. These go great in dryer balls. I just put them in the middle to make dryer balls with them. Alright, now you've got your card that we talked about earlier and your framing. And on occasion, my picture that I've done does not quite meet the edges, or it's even a little smaller. You can take the cutout from your framing, flip it to the other side, and then, you know, have a little background there. That works too. Or you can just use a colored card, whatever. But anyway, today we don't need that, so we're going to do this. All right, I kind of figure out where my frame's going to be. Got my card there. And then you're going to want a piece of double stick tape. You don't need very much. You're just going to put enough down to hold your wool in place so you can come back and glue it and get it where you want it. So I'm going to put a little piece of that down. And then again, put my frame so I can measure up exactly where I want this to go. Keep in mind I'm doing this upside down, so not that it should matter, but your brain tells you it does, so. All right, so that looks about right, and then I'm gonna take this off. And now, and I can tell you by looking at this that some of this is a little close. I want enough paper where the framing can stick down to it. But before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and glue this in place. To glue this, I use this fast grab tacky glue made by Aleene's. It's the best I've found for sticking wool to paper. Oops. It does not, it's very thick, and it does not bleed through the wool and cause hard spots. Some glues will do that. So I just put a little bit at the top. You don't need very much. A little bit there at the bottom on the sides if you really want to, but it's not necessary because you're going to hold that down with your framing. But this is going to hold it in place. All right, so get my lid here. All right. Now I can see, like I said, that it's very close over here, so I'm just going to trim a little bit more away. Maybe just a little bit on this side. Okay, check your framing. And now make sure, one thing you want to always make sure that your card is opening, facing the right direction. You don't want to be gluing it with the opening on the back side. Make sure you're facing the correct direction before you start doing all this gluing. All right, now, the best way I've found to do this, I use this quick dry tacky glue, also from Aleene's. The fast grab does not work very well for this. It's very thick. It will squish out all over the place and make a huge mess. I start, decide what color you want, if you want, what side you want, one side or the other of your framing. Since this is two-sided, I'm going to use the green. And I just put a thin bead across the top edge. And then I'm going to take my toothpick and squidgy that around, kind of squidgy it up into the corners without letting it be too thick at the edges. But you want to kind of make sure that's pretty well covered. Squeegee that all around. You don't want it thick anywhere else, it's just gonna squeeze out. But this stuff does dry pretty quick, which makes it, I mean, you do have a little time. Okay, I usually start at the top and get my frame, line it up with the edge of my card, and then press it down. Oops. Till it starts to set, it's going to squiggle around. So you have a little bit of wiggle room to get it on there right. And then just press it, hold it for a minute. Right, not a literal minute, but. Okay, once that's down pretty good, then I like to just take, now I'm going to work down the sides. And I like to pour a big blob of this down. This is the easiest way I found to do it. And if you can find an easier way, then I use my toothpick. If you're working on a table where you don't want to get glue all over the place, put it on a paper towel or something. And then just squidgy that up the side. Press it down. This is probably the trickiest part of the whole process. Trying not to get glue on everything. Trying not to let your paper towel get glued to your card. Trying to make sure that your framing goes on neatly. Okay. Neatly and completely. Because sometimes you get little bubbles in it and it doesn't stick down. You don't want that to happen. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Squidgy that glue down. You do sometimes grab wool with your toothpick. If you're like me and you tend to roll as you go, I do sometimes roll my toothpick as I go. Okay, and we're going to squidgy that side. Now this side is a little, you want to make sure that you have these spread enough apart that you're not going to get a buckle in the middle, a wrinkle, when you do that last bottom edge. Sometimes it happens. All right, got a little bit. If you do get some glue, You can just use your paper towel and kind of wipe that dry. It does dry very quickly, so there's not too much danger of it sticking. All right, now the bottom edge. See if I can do this upside down. You're just gonna squidgy that across bottom. And then I try to start in the middle and work out toward the edges and hold that down. Now I got lucky this time, I did not get a wrinkle. So once in a while you get a wrinkle, and that's kind of hard to work out. I have cheated on occasion and worked the wrinkle to the middle and then just cut it and overlap the paper, and then you can barely see it. But it doesn't happen very often. So, there's your card. Oops, see, I got a little buckle right there that I didn't get enough in there. You don't want that to happen, so I'm gonna get just a tiny bit of glue on my toothpick. And then hold it for a minute so it sticks. So that was probably the most complicated part of the whole card. But there you have it. And like I said, you can get, envelopes that fit this exact size. There are so many, there are so many different things you can do. I've done flowers. You can do all kinds of flowers. You can do people. I love doing these ones with locks. These do take a little more, sometimes take some extra postage. The lion, these have BFL locks. I love these little curly, corkscrewy BFL locks. Santa Claus, he has Icelandic beard and hair, but he has BFL eyebrows and mustache. You can do little scenes. This is taken from a friend who lives in Switzerland. He takes pictures of the Swiss barns, and I used, those were my inspiration for, that was my inspiration for that. And I have mermaids and snowmen and cattails, and then if you do something really fancy that you don't want to put on a greeting card, these are frameable. My husband makes these frames out of old barn wood, and the cards will fit into the frames from behind. So it's not only a card, it's a gift that someone can frame and have hanging on their wall. My grandkids love getting their wool painted greeting cards and get excited about what I'm gonna send them every year, and sometimes they want to hang them on their bedroom walls. So there's so many ways you could go with these. There's just a lot of, the sky's the limit. There's no limitation. It's only your own imagination and artwork that limit what you could do with this. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back when we do some more videos.